We're in the Raleigh garden this morning and we want to cover several things. We're going to give you an update on the Wallace, North Carolina garden that we introduced last year. I did a talk there this past weekend as you're watching this, and we shot a little update video. We're going to be doing some work there before the spring's over with. I've got to get some perennials under control. You know, as these things are emerging from the ground right now, they can be in new places that you didn't expect them to be, and they can be a little aggressive. So we're going to show you how I control a few of those things. It's really super simple. We're going to show you lots of things blooming here in the Raleigh garden in this video. So stick around. Before I get started though, I want to give a little bit of a weather warning. We're here in Raleigh, North Carolina, and believe it or not, we have a 90-degree day in the forecast for this week on Friday. Forecasted 90 degrees here right at the beginning of April. That'll be April 4th, okay, 90 degrees. But looking beyond that, next Tuesday is supposed to be 58 degrees with a low of 38. And when I see those nights in the 30s, 7, 8, 10 days out like that, I know from experience, from 39 years of experience, that could trend cooler between now and then. It could trend warmer, but it could trend cooler between now and then. Our average last frost date is April 15th. I know everybody gets out and gets started. The pollen has just, we're drowning in pollen here. We've actually shot this. We got a tiny little bit of rain this morning that settled it just a bit, but everything out here is covered in pollen. Again, this is normal thing though. We're going to get the threat of some sort of frost. And now for most things, it's not going to hurt anything. I mean, if it was 34 degrees, this Shasta viburnum is not going to be hurt by that. Even a light frost where it happens to hit 32 right around this plant, it's not going to hurt it in all likelihood. This Rosalinda Indian hawthorn is mature enough now. The flowers are about to open. I'm hoping that they're not fully open on a frost, but that one could be a little bit damaged. But most of the stuff is not going to get damaged. What could get damaged though is where we jump out ahead and we have hanging baskets out and we have these real tropical things that we're buying right now and putting them out. So we have our peppers and our tomatoes and all of those things germinated, but they're still mobile. You know, they don't want to put those things in the ground yet because it's, you know, peppers don't like it below 50. So a couple nights around 38 could actually set them back, and set them back in a way where if you put yours in 2 weeks before I do, and then I put mine when the soil temperatures actually reach 60 or 65, mine will actually outpace yours because yours now have to go through some sort of recovery to catch back up. And it's especially true with tomatoes. I have made the mistake at my garden center selling tomatoes in the past where I leave them out on the table and it's 40 degrees overnight because I go, well, it's not going to be a frost, so we'll just leave them outside. And then over the next few days, you'll see them turn kind of a purplish hue. They actually have a problem even at 40 degrees. They have an issue taking up nutrients. So it becomes like a phosphorus deficiency that shows up as a purple leaf on those tomato plants. So just, again, proceed with caution. Even though we're looking at a forecast, in a 7-day forecast, it shows 85, 87, 90. It's time to get started. Not necessarily. And that setback that you can take, it can be costly. And so we wait regardless. I know we're going to get at least one more little dive. I don't know what that dive is going to be. They can't predict weather 8-10 days out from now. So again, that 38 that's on the forecast currently might become 46 over the next week, or it might become 33 or 32, at which point I will have saved you here. Hold on to those things you bought this past weekend. Hold on to them another week or two before you put them in the ground and monitor that forecast. Let's jump around and actually do some gardening. We have some ajuga out front here that ultimately is going to need a little bit of control applied to it, but I don't need to do it now. And it's in full bloom so early in the season, and the pollinators are taking advantage of it during the day. But you know, we have so many named ajuga varieties out there that are all interesting with black foliage or different color flowers and just interesting ones in general. But just the straight up ajuga reptans is, you know, the flowers are so vigorous and, you know, such a vigorous plant. Again, that's an easy one to control though. It's actually, despite the fact that it may take a little more space than you want it to take, these typically like part shade or shade, and this thing gets full sun actually. But around lunchtime, the front of the house starts to put it in the shade. So it's one space that gets shaded a little earlier than others. There is some variegated Solomon seal out here, and it's been trapped by there was a rock, there was a a cinder block wall that went across here. And last year I went in here and got this cinder block wall out of here and got this bed, you know, where it's just one solid, you know, it was separated by a weird wall that didn't need to be there. But variegated solid seal is not one of my favorites. It can be a little aggressive in the garden, a little hard to garden with overall, but Steph likes it. It's getting a lot of sun here. I would imagine this area from here this way is actually going to struggle this season. The area up there a little further where that shadier part where that ajuga is, where it gets shadier earlier in the day, will probably be fine. I think it'll come up beautifully here and then look a little tattered later in the season. You know, I'm going to take, because that wall is not here, it's on the move. And so I'm going to take this opportunity, you know, right here at the beginning of the season, I'm going to actually dig up one of this clump that's decided to move up into the bed. I'm going to go ahead and pull it up. And we're going to put this in containers, and this will be part of our giveaways for the open garden. Again, you know, proceed with caution on where you plant it, but it's a great moist shade piece. There you go. Look how that comes out of the ground like that. And then I can just take it here and I'm gonna chop it into, looks mean, I know, but absolutely nothing wrong with that. We'll put that in a container, and that'll be part of the giveaways for the open garden. A quick update from the Wallace, North Carolina project at the Gardens of Southeastern North Carolina. If you've been following along with the channel, you know that back in the fall, we announced this garden, that we were creating this garden here. And we came in here, kind of cleared it out, cleaned it up, and then we put down some really kind of heavy wood chips. These were some root material, some big material here. It's going to take a little bit longer for these to be broken down properly to the point where we can really feel comfortable getting in here and planting. And so I think we're going to give this at least a couple more months, come back and check it again, but it's spongy under my feet. So already the magic of wood sitting on top of the soil is taking place, because I can feel it. We can see that it's sinking down, and we can feel that it's a bit more spongy already under here. But there is some big material here. Probably a few pieces are gonna have to ultimately be just kind of chunked to the side at some point, maybe. I don't know, but there is a playlist on the channel for this garden. You can go back and see our design, our initial design. It wraps around this tree and heads back in that direction back here. And we've already got some plants for this garden. So we're actually excited. I know I get no questions about it because we have the new garden in Raleigh, whether we're following through with this project, and we are, and we actually already have plants for this project. So I kind of like to be putting them in right now, but I think we're gonna give this a minute. This sandier soil down here in the eastern part of the state's a little bit different, and I want to make sure that we can rebuild a topsoil layer here and a humus layer and give these plants the best shot in the future. But the initial things we're going to be putting in here are some super interesting magnolias, so make sure you're subscribed to the channel to see those updates in the future. We put this Mexican sunflower out by the road. It's a great plant for out here because it's super tough. The asphalt doesn't bother it. It's sunny most of the day out here, but this is one that has really started to spread. And as it's coming up here in the spring, while the soil is a little bit more moist, unfortunately, we haven't gotten enough rain this winter, but while the soil is at least partially moist, it's the easiest time. I can see them starting to come up, and I can get in here and I can start to chop them off. My technique here is just to take my shovel and just cut them off right below the ground pretty much. I basically just, turn it into salad, by chopping it off like I'm chopping up a salad, and I'll just go under it, and I'm going to miss some, but I don't mind that I miss some. But I'm basically just trying to get down far enough to expose these roots. And again, I'm gonna miss a bunch of it, chopping it off like this, but I'll just come back in another week and do the same thing. And by the time I do it 3 times quickly like this, I'll have it done. And so I want it out there by the road. I just don't want it creeping up in here in this bed. And it has gotten, last year we let it get a little further than we should have, and now it's way back here in the back. But that's my technique, is I just chop it off below the ground and I move it around, make sure I get some portion of the root there, and that's good. and it'll lay out here in the sunlight, and the sunlight will do some damage to it. 5 or 6 more, 7, 8, 10 more will try to take its place in a week or so. Chop those off. It'll happen again, chop those off, and then I pretty much have it won at that point. Next year it'll creep back in here. If this is something that kind of, it's just like more than you want to do, it might be time to take the whole thing out. So, you know, at some point, you know, you have to make these decisions. Is it worth the whatever you're having to do? But again, it doesn't take, I mean, without me talking to the camera, I can get all these pieces chopped this first time in about 5 minutes, you know, and then a week from now, 5 minutes again. A week after that, maybe 3 minutes. And then again, I'll have it mostly under control for this year and back where I want it for the rest of the season. The blueberries are now pretty much in full flower. Last year, we actually did get a frost, but it happened after flowering, after the berries were actually set, and it had no impact on them. It's just that open flower stage right now where they'd be extremely vulnerable to it. There are native bees over here, bumblebees over here all day long, but it's a cloudy morning and it rained a little bit, so they're not out right this minute. But I enjoy watching the bees on these little dangling flowers on these blueberries. Blueberries, I said, but I did a talk at the Wallace garden last weekend, and I did a pollinator plant by the month during the year, and I actually did blueberries for April because I just think they're such good ornamental plants. And so we have native blueberry plants to the southeast United States, and then we have, of course, lots of hybridized blueberries for our, that we grow to eat and buy at the grocery store and that kind of thing. And they're all interesting decorative plants. They have great foliage, great flowers, great fall color, great for pollinators, and great, kind of peeling bark, in the winter time. That's kind of interesting. And I think undervalued as ornamental plants because, we just think of them as fruit plants. We put them into a category. Oh, they're in the fruit plant category, but I think they have a place in the ornamental plant category as well because they're always doing something interesting in the garden. This daffodil is called Ceylon, and it is a real standout in the garden. These are newly planted. We have some older planted ones in the garden. They bloomed out a little bit earlier. These were planted a little bit later, so they were and new this year, so they've bloomed a little bit later. But what a great yellow and orange contrast that one is. A good one for a cut flower. Stands up big and tall, comes back reliably in the garden here in Raleigh. Again, those were from Color Blends. This is an area along the driveway and along the edge of the new native garden over here that Steph plants lots of daffodils over here for cut flowers, actually. So they're kind of hidden from the rest of the garden, and she'll these are the ones she'll cut and bring inside the house. We have a white buckeye here, and it's not showing color yet, but I love how these unfold. And I'll show you on the red buckeye over there, which is a little more ahead, how these come out in the spring and develop this flower. The red buckeye and the white buckeye actually came from Ram in Tom Giberson's garden. Always sends us home with something from her garden. I love the way these emerge in the spring. So they'll come out what looks like it's going to be a flower bud at the end of the old stem right here. There's the top of the old stem. It looks like the flower bud's emerging, and what happens is that flower bud actually continues further up, and then the leaves unfold behind it. And it's just the neatest growth habit on these, where by the time this flower opens up, these leaves will have completely unfurled, and it'll have the backdrop. The flower will have the backdrop of the foliage. A lot of these things, come out, bloom, and then the foliage takes its place later. But I love the way it emerges, foliage and flowers at the same time. It's just such an interesting growth habit. And I love that red new stem growth along with the red flowers. And of course, this is one of our, great native plants. I don't know how much of the detail you'll be able to see here, but this is the Chinese mayapple. We have native mayaples too. You'll see a little piece of B-roll here of our native mayaples. They're just not as far along as this Chinese mayapple is, but you see the flower about to open here, lots of other buds. Same as our native mayapple, the flowers are kind of under an umbrella you know, an umbrella sits over the top of them, so I guess a pollinator can go to that flower underneath, rain or shine, right? Under this umbrella. Definitely, you know, slightly different leaf shape between the Asian and our native May apples. This one also has the, I mean, it has this really serrated edge on the edge of the leaf, and I don't know how well that's going to show up. Maybe against my hand there, you can see how serrated that actually is. Super interesting. Our native May apple, which is a little further down the line there, they're both, I guess, spring ephemerals, but our native one will come up, bloom, and goes back to ground really quickly. The Chinese May apple was still up and around and was one of the most photographed things in the open garden last year in middle June. So they're much later, they're much more heat tolerant, a little later to go back to ground. But we love them both here in the garden. We have a couple of the Southgate rhododendrons. This is the first one that's opening any flowers on it. This is Southgate Radiance. These were picked for heat tolerance. I've seen them down at the Hammond Research Station. I don't know what kind of shape they're in now because that was years ago when I saw them. But they were, at that time, taking the heat of South Louisiana and doing fine. This back line back here is so dry that we stunted this one badly when it first went in the ground, just not paying attention to it. It was completely our fault. It had nothing to do with the plant. It was, you know, there's a big oak tree behind it, a big magnolia behind it, English ivy back there growing, various other things really stunted it. We didn't water it enough, and so it set it back, way back. But I can see it's budded up to leaf out and budded up to flower. So I think I'm only getting 3 clusters of flowers this year, but every other branch has got new growth coming out on it. So I think it's really gonna do some growing this spring finally. But it is flowering and it's alive, and we've managed to figure out this back line back here and water it a little bit more during the drier parts of the season. But those Southgate rhododendrons, if you run into them anywhere, they're definitely worth a try here in the South. We do struggle with this back line at times with drought conditions, but of course the hellebores do well back here. May apples have actually done well back here, considering that they would not really like dry shade. And the pulmonaria are just standouts. There's so many new pulmonaria out there. This one's called Silver Bouquet, and it's just a show off in this back garden, and it's kind of bulletproof. It doesn't need any water really, and got a couple others in the front garden out there. There's a lot of new varieties and a lot of new breeding. The Farfugium is got lots of new growth on it. We've got a couple different Farfugium out here, but you can see the yellow on top of it, the speckling. That speckling is actually pollen that didn't get washed off this morning off of those big leaves. We love Farfugium. Farfugium and Ligularia used to be in the same group, and they've separated Ligularia, which are much more cold hardy, from Farfugium. So those of you, if you like that look of that plant, you can, you know, get a Ligularia that's more cold hardy. But these are really kind of zone 8A hardy, and if they go to sleep ugly, they don't sometimes wake up here in our area, meaning that if this thing was in, you know, it was in full flower and it's still growing in November when it got slammed by some freeze, and it's knocked it back quite a bit, but having been in the ground for 2 years, it survived it without any problem. We've lost another one over there, and I think it was a combination of it getting hit too hard with the freeze and also being in a slightly wetter area over there in the winter time. Coming up the line, we have this Pittosporum, and I actually don't know what that's. Probably the only plant in the garden I don't 100% know. You know, I've even tried to put it out to all my my expert friends out in the world, and I think it's a hybrid between you know, a couple species. But anyway, it's got a great compact habit. It's just, again, I'm trying to figure it out, but I think it's a hybrid between two different species, but it has a wider leaf than the species we actually think it is. So that's the weird part about it. But anyway, we'll figure it out at some point, or not. Brunera, this is Brunera flowering season. They tend to bloom super early in the spring. The flowers, this one's small, of course. It was a very small plant when it went in the ground last year, so it doesn't have as many flowers, but those blue flowers against that variegated foliage, this is just a variegated Brunera. There are some named ones out there in the world, but this is just the regular variegated Brunera. Those blue flowers really show up nicely against that variegation as it becomes more mature and has more flowers on it in the future. Another ajuga back in the background of it. We have lots of ajuga out here in this garden, and they're all starting to show off. Got Griffin outside this morning doing a little bit of training. He's getting better and better about being out here without us. We still have to pay attention to him, that's for sure. Can't turn our backs on him for long, but he's much better out here and a lot less likely to just be digging and things like that. A lot of the things that he can do out here in the garden. And Holly's here. She's struggling a bit, just updating the world to Holly. She's got a lot of issues going on at 16, but she's out here and she's enjoying, nose up, sniffing. Took a walk this morning, but she's up a lot at night now and is really struggling with some issues. We can't do much about it, nothing about it at 16. This is autumn bonfire. I'll wrap this video up here. This is an autumn bonfire Encore Azalea that we kind of rescued from too much shade on the other side. And as much as I'll sit here and do these videos and tell folks that these Encore Azaleas need more sun than other azaleas, I'm guilty of putting them in too much shade as well. Soon as we slid it over here last fall, it immediately responded to it. It's a little naked down at the bottom because again, it was stretching over in the shade. And this one is now fully loaded in buds. But this is bonfire, red, kind of semi-double flower. This one gets about 3 to 4 feet in height. Autumn fire stays a little lower, more like 1 to 2 feet in height, something like that. But this one's just going to be an absolute full flower. We'll show it. Pollen's getting me. We'll show it in a video maybe next week in passing how much this thing will just be fully flowered up. But again, it responded immediately to being in more sun. So keep that in mind if you are getting Encore Azaleas. Of course, if you get in the deep south, zone 9, 10, you probably want to move them into a bit more shade. But here in zone 8, they'll take absolute full sun. So there you go. There's a few updates here in the Raleigh garden. Let us know what's going on in your area. And looking back there at Griffin, make sure he's not getting in any trouble. Back here in the background, he seems to like the Chinese May apple as well. So thank you guys so much for following along.